Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Star Wars Stuff Podcast. My name is David,
I'm Retro Ray.
And I'm Carl.
and this is where we talk all things Star Wars, and in particular, all stuff Episode 1 and 2 of the brand new AHSOKA series on Disney+. Carl, you have seen before on our Patreon, and I think on some of our other podcasts as well. But he's a really good buddy of mine, very big Star Wars brain, big brain in general. And he has done a lot of reading up on Thrawn, and I invited him today to kind of specifically talk about Thrawn. But of course, he's going to talk about all the other topics that we have. But before we get started, I do want to talk about all of our awesome support on Patreon. So on the purple tier, we have Chris Simpson, Kevin Leininger, Dev McCaffrey, Drew Peters, Zach Netzel. On the red tier, we have Fenrir526, Maya Morris. On the black tier, we have Maka Tautala, Nathan Shank, Evan O'Paker, Liam McCallion, and Texas Vader 76. Thank you so much, everyone, for your awesome love and support. And also, thank you to everyone out there that listened to our first few episodes of coverage of AHSOKA. We had thousands and thousands of listens and views on YouTube. And then speaking of YouTube, we finally hit the 1,000 subscriber mark. So thank you so much to everyone out there. There's our YouTube channel if you're watching us right now. Don't forget to like, maybe subscribe if you haven't. Drop a comment in there if you have comments, questions, especially about Thrawn, since we have Carl on today that has a lot of knowledge on Thrawn. Let us know what you're thinking, what your questions are, and interact with us. We welcome it. So but thank you so much to everyone that subscribed to our YouTube channel. We're trying to build that up. Most of I think you guys listen via audio. So if you want to watch us sometime, we're on YouTube at Star Wars Stuff Podcast. Very easy to find. So we've done 3 episodes on AHSOKA. This will be the 4th, essentially, on episodes 1 and 2. But there have been a lot of conversations that have happened in the past few days. And spoiler alert for episodes 1 and 2. If you haven't seen episodes 1 and 2, what are you doing? Why are you listening or watching us? Because surely everyone that's listening, watches, has seen these episodes. And some of the big topics we're going to talk about. But first, I want to get Carl's opinions on the first 2 episodes. What did you think about this new Disney Plus show?
Well, so far so good. It feels a lot like Rebels, as it should. The same characters, same writer. So you would think that would be the case. So far, there's not any real concerns on my front, anyways. It seems like they're all everything's going pretty steadily. We'll see how the show develops. Obviously, I've criticized some of the more recent shows for excessively bad writing, like Obi-Wan. I thought it was terrible on the writing front. Beautiful visuals, but the writing on that show made you kind of scratch your head a little bit. So hopefully this show will not fall into that category. But so far it seems like there's a lot more love towards these characters shown, probably because these are Filoni's characters. So that makes a big difference, because you can feel a definite respect for the characters, which I thought was lacking entirely in Obi-Wan. There was absolutely no respect given to those characters whatsoever. It was just like they were just going to do whatever the hell we want to, and whether it makes sense or not is secondary, which doesn't, hopefully that was the last time we had to see that.
Cool. So the big topic, I think, that a lot of people, I think most people are talking about, is the fact that Sabine was stabbed in the stomach and survived. And of course, when the stabbing happened, I thought, okay, she's dead. There's no way you can come back from that. But if you really look at it and really get technical, she wasn't stabbed in the middle, maybe severing her spinal cord or messing with her backbone.
That's a liver shot right there.
Okay.
So with the liver shot cauterized the way it would be from that, she'll be alive for a little while. And now if she was just laying there for hours on end, she'd die. But Yeah, just
Right.
from that by itself, no, that's not lethal. I mean, you can get shot in the liver, and it takes a while for you to die from that. So, uh, certainly not comfortable, I would imagine. But
Right.
yeah, no. Now, why she didn't get finished off, that I don't understand. That's kind of one of those, if this is like a Sith-like character, I know they're not technically Sith, but uh, if this is like a Sith-like evil character, why wouldn't you do the finishing blow?
I think 'cause
And
she's go ahead.
and that's the interesting part of it. Do you think the intent was not to kill?
It kind of would, one would have to kind of assume that because there's enough time there for her to, do whatever she wants to at that point. But yeah, and I know Ahsoka is coming. She's aware that she's coming with it. It takes all of about 2 seconds to finish her off at that point when she's completely defenseless on the ground. So the argument would I think hold water that she just wasn't supposed to kill her at all.
Right.
So what the logic would be there, I don't quite know, but maybe that gets explained.
I think since they're kind of border Jedi, they're Jedi basically doing anything to survive currently. I think they're trying to follow the Jedi ways, but they're in that gray area. They're doing bounty hunter jobs to, or doing things to survive. So I think she did what she needed to do, but she wasn't going to finish her off because she still kind of has somewhat of the Jedi training, I guess you can say.
Well, you could say that, I guess, but then at the same time, when you watch her on the Republic ship earlier in the episode, she's pretty ruthless and cut people in half. So there's no quarter given there. So why would you not give any quarter in the first fight you show, and then in the second fight you show, you're like, man, I'm not gonna kill you. We're good. Yeah,
It could maybe fall back on her training with Baylan Skull. Maybe Baylan trained his Padawan Shin Hati in maybe a modified version where they are kind of like this kind of dark Jedi type figure, and he's kind of raising her a specific way in a sense, and that we don't kill our own kind, even if they are full light side, green sabered, whatever. But everyone
True.
else, it's fair game. Maybe that is a possibility.
Yeah. So I mean, that's what I'm saying. It very well could be an explanation that we just haven't gotten. We're 2 episodes in, so there's.
I just want to say hi to Shamarikwe Onyebuche. This person says she's got stormtrooper aim. Highly possible, but improbable, I think. But yeah, so that is something that everyone seems to be talking about on social media, everywhere online, which I don't think they should be talking about. I think they should be talking about this. And Carl earlier today brought this up to me, and I think there was an article out a long time ago that addressed the same thing. So when you see the hologram with Hu Yang and Ahsoka, Hu Yang explaining this saber I can't talk to because I have no data on it, but the other saber, Baylan Skull saber, was a saber that was recorded in his databanks. So this saber, though, looks identical to, if you're watching this on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Kanan's saber, which is on the right-hand side. A few modifications for Shin Hati's saber in the hologram here, but overall, it looks like it's Kalen's recovered saber that Shin Hati is actually using in the show.
Yeah, initially when I looked at it, I thought it was exactly that, but I still believe this is probably the leftovers of Kanan's saber. I mean, he did get blown up quite a bit, so there's a question as to how much of that saber was still functional, but at the end of all that, by the time Kanan's dead, so and Governor Price did have the lightsaber as a trophy.
Well, right. I mean, it makes you think about the lightsaber. If you bring this up on that Empire Strikes Back, Luke loses his saber that Obi-Wan gave him.
Mm-hmm.
But then later on we see it when it's presented to Rey.
Right.
So they were in the cloud. Where did the saber go? We see it fall. when it's a trash compactor, so we just say that it just popped from there to later down the line. That kind of
Well,
brings that question.
right, but in Kanan Saber's case, we actually know what happened to it because Governor Price gets it, and she uses it to prove that Kanan was killed.
True, that's true.
So we know that essentially the group of players that is currently responsible for what's going on in the show had a hold of the saber to one degree or another. So could Governor Price have given it up? Sure. Or there's a whole bunch of things that may have happened in between. We don't know. But I just find it curious that they make a specific mention of the saber and that it was built in in a Jedi Padawan fashion, which the character is wielding it doesn't have it doesn't have official instruction in lightsaber building from from a Jedi Academy.
True.
Kanan does. Kanan constructs his lightsaber after Order 66, so therefore they wouldn't have any record of it.
True.
So there's that, and Star Wars doesn't really repeat lightsaber design at any point. At least not to my knowledge. There's little elements here and there that some of the lightsabers share, but there's never like, oh yeah, this is that's cool. Let me rebuild that same lightsaber. The only repetition we really have is Luke's Return of the Jedi lightsaber being more or less a from memory copy of Obi-Wan.
True.
But that's it. That's the only time that I know that there's a direct duplication of another person's saber. And if you don't know the person at all, why would you duplicate his saber? It seems like too much of a coincidence for this not to be on purpose.
What also thinks back to a couple of, I'm not sure it was in AHSOKA. I'm sorry, the Clone Wars, or was it Rebels, where sabers are considered valuable in the black market, where they get, people see them, they can steal them to resell them. I think it was AHSOKA's saber that got stolen, and she was trying to recover it. But they're popular to resell. So that's a possibility.
Right. And then in Aftermath, there's a whole hunt for Vader's saber, for example.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is that they make pretty clear in canon as well is that there are no more kyber crystals readily available. So
yeah,
if you want to build a lightsaber, you pretty much have to recycle somebody else's kyber crystal. So that would be another reason why, okay, there is a functioning lightsaber available to these characters technically. Why wouldn't you take that, modify to put a little bit of your own spin? So change the tip of it to that 3-prong setup. Add the tape in the middle of the grip, and more or less, this is that saber for if you look at it honestly. And then let's not forget, this is also an interpretation. It would also be an interpretation in live action of a CG saber.
True.
So, that also would be slightly different anyway, look wise. So, if nothing else, this was done just as a means of harking back at that saber and see if anybody pays attention. But I would actually venture a guess that even canonically, this ends up being actual Kanan saber to varying degrees.
Yeah. To me, it'd make a lot of sense. So
yeah,
I think that's something that, like I said, I haven't heard or read anywhere that anyone's really talking about this fact. Everyone's talking about everything else, including the fact that Sam Witwer's name was included in the credits. And when people started talking about this so much, I was like, well, wait a minute. Sam Witwer's in every credit of every Star Wars show ever done, because he, along with a few other people, Matthew Wood there, you can see Shelby Young as well, are used a lot for voices when they need just additional ADR for droids and for comms and stuff like that. They usually call upon Sam Witwer, and he's a huge Star Wars fan, as we all know. And he's the voice of Maul in Rebels. And I mean, he's also Starkiller in the video games as well, which that's another big rumor that's going around. But Ray, Carl, what do you think about Sam Witwer's credit here? Is it all much ado about nothing really, like I'm thinking, or
yeah, I mean, Sam Witwer is credited in just about every show around. I mean, this is about as much proof of anything as, I don't know, George Lucas being the creator of Star Wars being credited. I mean, okay, fine. Sam Witwer did voices. That doesn't mean anything. I mean, what are you going to say next? That Maul is in the show? Clearly that's not the case. And so I've heard this whole rumor that, because Sam is in there, that means that Vader's apprentice is in this, and that they're going to do something like a Star Killer, and that it's
Right.
that guy. That is just reaching so hard at this point that there's absolutely no evidence of that being the case. Could that be? Of course, it could be. I mean, who knows? But it seems like a very, very, very strong reach that has absolutely no foundation in anything. I mean, just because somebody's credited in something doesn't mean anything. I mean, Frank Oz could be credited. It doesn't mean Yoda's going to walk across the screen anytime soon. So that's my opinion on
that. You're on mute.
So who do you think Merrick is? Do you think it's somebody we know, or do you think this is just another just kind of like diversion because we don't see the face and Filoni's kind of just like messing with us in a way?
Well, it could be a number of things. I mean, again, that character isn't defined enough to really make any judgment whatsoever. All you know is that he's male, and he knows how to use a lightsaber. Okay, well, that could be any number of characters. I mean, for all we know, yes, it could be Ezra. It could be the fabled Vader's apprentice character, Star Killer, whatever. But at the end of the day, I think right now I would go with this is a new character that we just haven't seen before.
So just throwing this out there, since of course we all thought Darth Maul was dead, got cut in half. There's no way you can survive that. Of course, we see in Star Wars Clone Wars, and then we see Star Wars Rebels. He gets robot legs. Then later on, he gets his legs back when the witches, change it out. Just throwing it out there, but what if this could be? I mean, technically, look at Vader. He's got robotic body parts. What are the odds of this being Kanan?
Well, Kanan got blown up, though. I don't think there's going to be any like body parts left to recover out of that one.
Well, I mean, that's what we're assuming.
Well, true. They didn't actually show us the gory bits in Rebels, but
yeah,
on Disney XD.
That's what we're assuming.
But I think the implication that there was, okay, yeah, there's a giant explosion. He's pretty much blown to smithereens. So if you're gonna find anything of Kanan, it's gonna be dust and maybe a piece of his ear or something. But yeah, again, they saved us the gory details of that. But you're right. I mean, technically, as far as what's defined about this character, yeah, it could be, but we just have no information. So at this point, yeah, you can speculate pretty much anything. But I don't see any valid evidence that this is anybody we know versus somebody that we don't know. So I guess we'll have to sit back and wait for him to explain if there's anything to it, because he could just be yet another Inquisitor or Inquisitor trainee or whatever he may be,
or another new force sensitive character that's
right.
Yeah.
I mean, he's using an Inquisitor saber, so it would stand to reason that if he was trained in anything, that he very well could be, an Inquisitor in training. But
true.
Do we know? No, we don't. And so at this point, I'll just kick back and wait for some answers before making judgment on what this is. Everybody likes to jump on these bandwagons immediately upon seeing something. Remember the Thanos thing where with the 3 scars, and it's proof that Wolverine is in the movie. And like, Jesus, I mean, this seems to be one of those type of scenarios where people are just kind of hanging everything on like one small subtlety that this must mean that it's this. Now that doesn't mean anything at all. How about you let them tell the story first?
That's true. Then they were saying that Tony Stark was going to be in the the last movie as well. That's true too. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, people see one little tidbit of information and automatically it has to be this, and there's no way to change it, and then they get disappointed when it's not this crazy theory. So
That is true. Yeah.
I think cooler heads should prevail, and you should actually see what they actually wrote, and judge the story by what they're actually putting together, not by what your head canon may or may not be.
Yeah, the other thing about Merrick that I kind of noticed was when you watch that fight again between Merrick, the HK droid, and Ahsoka on Corellia, is Merrick being tempered in a way with this fighting, with the saber fighting, or is Ahsoka that much better than him because he kind of like had to run away from it? Do you think there's a grander plan in place that we're just not aware of?
Well, I think the focus here is to get away with that hyperdrive. They're clearly trying to extract that hyperdrive from Coruscant, and so I think this is just a delay tactic. So I think he's far more capable one than what they show us. So I think but the whole point is delay her long enough so she can't do anything about us taking off with this hyperdrive. Because clearly, not clearly, but assumption can be made that this hyperdrive is what they're going to use to try and get to that location that they're trying to get to. So
that is true.
So the hyperdrive that they're using, it appears it's a similar hyperdrive to what a super Star Destroyer uses.
Right. So way more power than what would be necessary for any of the ships they've shown us so far in their possession.
Right. And they show you the hyperspace ring that we've all seen before in live action. Is that going to mount onto the ring, or is it mounting on the ship that Morgan Elsbeth is in?
I don't know. I'm actually kind of interested to see where this is supposed to go.
Right.
Yeah, because when I saw it, it reminded me of the ships, like when the Jedi would their ships would connect to it and then take off.
Yeah,
that's the first thing that popped in my head when I saw it. So I was kind of like, well, what's going to connect to this? Is it going to be actual ship that connects to it too, or is it going to be an actual like a portal kind of thing? I don't know. I kind of had questions on that too.
Yeah, I mean they've done several. As far as I know, the only thing they've done in Star Wars, they haven't really done like hyperjump portals.
Right.
So they've done the dockable hyperdrives like the Jedi starfighters have, and there's a couple other ships that use similar systems. So I'm assuming it's going to be something similar to that, like that they just need additional oomph over their standard hyperdrive to make that distance, because they're clearly jumping way further out than what normally would be done with a regular hyperdrive. So,
right. And has there ever been any occurrence, if any of you guys remember in Star Wars, of them leaving the actual galaxy to another galaxy?
Yes, Vader and Thrawn.
Okay.
Matter of fact, Vader's hand pilots the ship through hyperspace in that scene. So they do go into the outer regions. So that it has been done.
Well, they've gone to the outer reaches, but a different galaxy, though.
Well, not necessarily, but I guess it can be done. Yeah. So, but again, they're doing something different, which I'm pretty excited to see where they're going to go with it. Right. Because Lord knows we need something different in Star Wars. I've been saying that for years.
So, Ray, what do you think are like the implications with the new galaxy entering the Star Wars storytelling?
Well, it's giving us, it's like a new opportunity with new characters, new aliens, possible Jedi that were in that area. That, you know what I mean? There's so many opportunities for new stuff. So I'm very curious, because it seems like the ancestors that built that temple or whatever where the witch was at has been around way before. You know what I mean? So that really makes me think of how longer had they been around? It's kind of like basically aliens in us. You know what I mean? they're saying there's UFOs, whatever. But what if there is aliens out there and they're in other galaxies that we don't know about? Kind of the same premise. How long have they been around? Have they been around as long as us? Or longer than us? Kind of the same premise. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so Disinferno on YouTube asked the question, what if this new galaxy has its own Jedi Order? I think it's going to have something maybe similar to the Jedi, and of course it's not going to be called Jedi because it's a whole new galaxy.
Right.
That would be my assumption. But of course we know that the Night Sisters are there, essentially, have some type of connection to Thrawn and Morgan Elsbeth, the place they want to head out to. So I think this actually adds a lot of opportunity for future Star Wars creators, stories, just a new maybe set of rules almost with the Force and magic, and like a pretty much a new frontier, really. What do you guys think we're going to see in this third episode?
Completely impossible to say, which I like. I like the fact that we're currently in a spot where you don't really know where we're going with this. I mean, there's a rough outline of what's going to happen. What I can tell you, it's easier to say what we're not going to see than over what we are going to see. We're not going to see either Ezra or Thrawn, for example. I know that for a fact. That there's literally no logical way that they would already jump to those things unless it's a flashback. I mean, obviously they could do some flashbacks and introduce some Thrawn into general canon, because you have to remember that a lot of the people that are watching this show have no earthly idea who this character is. So I wouldn't be surprised if we start getting a few flashbacks just to kind of introduce the character that all these people are after, because to general viewership, okay, who's this Thrawn guy and why do they keep talking about him? So I think they kind of owe everybody an explanation, because most people have not seen Rebels. Most people don't read the books. And so I think you kind of need to introduce the object of everybody's, desire here and give people an explanation. And we know that there are flashbacks in the show simply by the trailer they ran where they showed Thrawn for the first time. He's in his Grand Admiral uniform. Well, he wouldn't be wearing that anymore. So, aside from the fact that he got destroyed, he's not going to go make another one, because why? There's no logical reason for that. So, I think if I had to guess, I think next episode might be a flashback episode to kind of introduce us to some of the concepts that haven't been explained to the general audience yet.
Like what exactly?
Like, for example, introducing Thrawn as a Grand Admiral. It maybe we might even get to see Ezra in his Rebels form. And yes, they showed the little hologram version of him, so there's that. But we may actually get to see a closer shot. Like you may see Sabine, for example, remembering some stuff, and because we have all these Rebels characters there, to where it would make sense that they would start talking about some of the things that have happened, and maybe do that in a flashback sequence just so that they can explain to the general audience what it is they're talking about, because again, people just don't know.
So what are your thoughts that Thrawn and Ezra, what do you think happened once they jumped? Do you think they battled, or what do you think? What are you expecting?
Well, what I'm hoping is and what I'm expecting are maybe two different things. But what I'm expecting is, for one, Thrawn and Ezra would not have fought. I think they would have actually come to the conclusion that they need each other because they're now in an environment that neither one of them is familiar with, and their chances of survival would increase if they work together. So that is one thing I would expect. The second thing I would expect is Thrawn, as he is in the books and even in Rebels, he's not really a bad guy. He's not like a villain per se. He's an antagonist, but not a villain. He respects his adversaries. He respects lives. So he has all this respect for people, and without a reason to attack somebody, he wouldn't attack anybody. Would he defend himself? Sure. If Ezra attacked him, sure, he would defend himself. But at the same time, there's also no reason for Ezra to attack him. what do you why would you do that if you're out in the middle of nowhere and this is the only civilized person around? I think what most likely would have occurred is, I don't know if anybody's read Enemy Mine or seen the movie. Um, I
Yeah,
think
I
that
remember.
I think that scenario is the most likely, that they're both stranded on an unknown world, and the only way to survive is to make a truce.
True.
So I think I would expect that, and I would expect that through that they would get to know each other a lot better, and Ezra will probably realize that this is, like I said, not a villain. This is somebody who had an objective and was on the opposite side to try to get things done. But Thrawn is in Rebels and in the books described very clearly as not somebody who's like, oh, I'm going to do a bunch of evil things. That's never the objective. There's, what do I need to get done to further my cause, but not at all costs. He refuses to shoot civilians, for example. He does in the Battle of Lothal, but that's really the only time they show him doing that. Matter of fact, he resists that in the book several times over when he gets a direct order to do so. So, this is not somebody that's just out to do evil. So, I don't think that that's where we're going. I think, and my personal hope is that they actually do a complete reversal on Thrawn, and that Thrawn turns into an ally.
Wow.
Because that would be, to me personally, the most logical step, because he wouldn't want anything to do with the Empire anymore because they no longer form a threat. The reason why he joined the Empire is because of the Death Star and the threat it posed to Chiss ascendancy. That was his motivation. So that's all gone. The Emperor is dead. The person that he swore allegiance to is dead. The Death Star has been destroyed twice over. So none of that exists anymore. There's no, his motivation for being a member of the Empire is just gone. And the people that, like we saw in Mandalorian, how they're talking about this stuff, none of these people have any real idea who Thrawn is. They just know, oh, he's a Grand Admiral, but they're not connected to anything that that has anything to do with what Thrawn had been doing all along. Not one of those characters does. So I think their idea of what he is and what he actually is are two different things. And even the Emperor was aware of the fact that Thrawn holds, he's a Chiss first and foremost, second, and then, but he's also, fiercely loyal. If he says he's going to do something, he's going to do it. So that's why the Emperor trusts him, because he trusts in the loyalty as the oath sworn. But there's also a lot of mistrust there from the Emperor's side towards Thrawn.
And I kind of think that with Thrawn's intellect and his status, he knows that Palpatine is still around, that he could possibly return. So I think maybe that's actually kind of a fundamental thing that's woven into something they might not even address in Ahsoka or anything in the future. But Thrawn, I think, is privy to details that Exegol exists, that fleet exists. I think he knows that, and I think he might be the only character that's alive that does. And we'll eventually see everything that unfolds up into Episode 7, up into the Battle of Jakku. But I think it answers the question that a lot of fans had: where was Ahsoka during everything that went down in Return of the Jedi, in the sequel trilogy, and everything else that happened afterwards? It's like, why wasn't she around? I think the answer, we got it in these episodes. She is eventually going to head to a different galaxy, and that might be the start of Star Wars as we know it, a brand new era. And I do like this comment that Tremere K made on YouTube. What if the Night Sisters are their form of Jedi, and it's a way darker take on the Force? That makes a lot of sense, because if you think about it, if they're in a galaxy where the Force has never really been studied, introduced, and then these Night Sisters show up that are basically witches that are using the Force for their magic, that's going to be like their gods, basically. It just depends on how evolved they are and how long they've been around. But I mean, if if it's essentially power that's greater than the technology they have, yeah, it's going to be that kind of overriding factor on whatever systems there that we're going to take a trip to, that we're assuming that we're going to take a trip to. So I do like that.
What I'm interested to see is if they're going to show us some of the Night Sister powers as they're shown in Jedi Survivor, for example. Some of the teleportation abilities, these alternate reality rifting stuff that they show in the game. Since those games are supposed to be canon, I would assume that we're going to see that here now that they're introducing a Night Sister as an actual character. We should see some of those powers actually manifest on screen for the first time. That would be really cool.
Now going back to comics, I know there's this character that's named Jax. What if we see his species in this new world where they jump to?
That'd be cool. Jackson the Space Rabbit.
Yeah. That would be too funny.
The other thing, and David and I were talking about this earlier, I wouldn't be surprised if you get to see the Grisk for the first time.
Yeah.
Actually on screen. This is one of the reasons why Thrawn joined the Empire, so it would be a good reason to show them, to give his character more motivation. Because you kind of have to fill that out to explain to people, if you're gonna, especially if you're gonna do a switch over, like if he's going to be 180 degree turned over to the opposite direction of what people are used to seeing that character as, you're going to have to explain that to people, and the Grisk would be an easy way of explaining it, because that's the reason why one of the reasons why he joins the Empire is to help protect the Chiss ascendancy against the Grisk.
That would be cool.
So that's another thing that we may well get to see. I don't know that we are or not, but yeah, there's no evidence in that in anything thus far.
On YouTube, Disinferno writes, my prediction for episode 3, Sabine's training plus maybe Anakin's flashback. I'm not quite sure we're going to get Anakin until maybe Filoni's episode, which is episode 5, and that's the last one he directs. He wrote the entire series, but that's the very last episode he does. So I'm thinking we're going to get a bunch of Anakin stuff there. But you might be right. I think we might get the flashback of Sabine being taken on as Ahsoka's Padawan, and that'd be super interesting to see that type of flashback, because there's that huge span of time, and they allude to it in the show, and Sabine calls Ahsoka master, and there's just kind of implied history that they had with the training, and then they say Ahsoka walked away from the Jedi Order, she walked away from Anakin, and she walked away from Sabine. So there's a lot of story there that we haven't covered yet, but
what does everybody think about this? Is of course also rumor mill that Kanan will be in one of the flashbacks, more precisely that Freddie Prinze Jr. is going, even though he denies being in the show, but everybody always denies that they're in anything.
Exactly.
Yeah, we've talked about that. We've mentioned
that. So what do you think? Because for example, I think it might be valuable also for the overall live action viewing audience to show Kanan training Sabine and how to use the Darksaber, so that people can make that connection as well. So because Sabine did hold the Darksaber and voluntarily surrendered it, so that might be worth bringing in and kind of doing a flashback. Yes, I know we've seen it in Rebels, but again, most people have not seen that, so I think it might be worth showing something like that. In which case, you could do a quick Freddie Prinze Jr. maybe with the face shield on, say.
Yeah,
it would be easy enough to do. Matter of fact, they don't even necessarily need Freddie Prinze Jr. for that scene. They could cast anybody and use the same voiceover from Rebels. So use Freddie Prinze Jr.'s voiceover, reenacting the same scene, so using the same dialogue. So we could technically see Kanan, and Freddie Prinze Jr. could not be a liar, because he could actually not be in the show and still be in the show at the same time.
What I would like to see is maybe a flashback where he's training Kanan, and then the flashback that ties, him, training Sabine as well, kind of to get a taste of both for fans who have never seen Rebels. Because you got to admit, there's going to be a lot of people who have not seen Rebels.
Yeah, the vast majority of the people watching this show don't have a clue about Rebels.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Carl, your dog does he need something? He's whimpering a whole lot.
Yeah, he just wants attention. Hold on.
Okay. Yeah. So I was going to ask you about that, Ray. Now that we've had time to digest these 2 episodes and have them sit with us for a few days now, what do you think? I think I lost my train of thought here. I was going to ask you. I think I just forgot exactly what I was going to ask you.
Well,
So
I'm ready.
What were you going to say, Ray? About I think you're going to say something specific.
Well, like I said, I mean, those are questions that I would want to see, because yes, they're saying Freddie Prinze, he's coming out. He's saying he's not going to, but I mean, how can you not have Freddie Prinze come out and at least flashback scene?
To me, you can do everything with it. I mean, Freddie Prinze is not integral to anything that they're doing in live action, really. And what Carl brought up was the fact that he's denied it profusively that he is not going to be in this, that he's not going to be in any Star Wars at all. But of course, people have said stuff like that in the past. He might be Merrick. He might be a different version of Kanan that they pull out of World Between Worlds. We don't know. I mean, it's anything's really possible. Right. But I do remember now what I was going to ask you. Now that we've sat with Ahsoka, do you think they did enough for the audiences to watch Ahsoka and to be fine with not watching the Rebels animated show?
I thought so to a certain extent, but there's some people who are saying they don't like the way Ahsoka was acting in the first 2 episodes. One person put it on, I think it was on Comic Book News, basically said that one person put it as Ahsoka was going through a midlife crisis kind of right now. That's why she's not really acting like the Ahsoka that we're used to seeing in Rebels. You know what I mean?
Well, I think what people also need to come to grips with is she has to be deeply disturbed by the fact that her master turned out to be who he turned out to be. And matter of fact, if you watch the fight between them in Rebels,
yes, exactly.
When the mask comes off and she finally realizes who that is, that affects her deeply. So I would think that she would be a little disenchanted with that whole idea all of a sudden that, her former master and friend turned into this monster.
Yeah. So, dealing with that and then dealing with, being pulled out and having to adjust to the changes of what's going on, I think has affected her, who she was at one point. Now she's older, she's a little bit more wiser, so she looks at things differently. So I think that's what a lot of it is, because that's one thing too. Someone was also mentioning that, she didn't really give emotion to Sabine. So there's no telling, like, when she was training her, did she have any emotion towards Sabine, or was she just basically just straight, drill sergeant trying to train her and she wasn't listening? There's so much behind that.
I would actually venture a guess that the reason why she stopped training, because she even says in the show that she stopped training Sabine. It's not that Sabine stopped wanting to learn. She walked away from Sabine, is what she said.
Exactly.
One reason that one could easily infer for her to do that would be that she realized, hey, I'm not a trainer, for one, and two, if I mess up, I create another Vader.
Yeah, that's true.
Because this is an undisciplined person, let's face it, Sabine is not exactly known to be the most, disciplined person in Star Wars. As a matter of fact, the exact opposite, and they made that perfectly clear in these episodes as well. And so I think we may actually get that as an explanation, because I think it's pretty much clear that at some point she's going to explain to Sabine why she left her. Mm-hmm. And I think that may very well be the explanation. Is like, hey, I didn't want to create another Vader.
Yeah.
She may not be as powerful as Anakin, I get that, but still, you don't want to create another dark side user just by training them incorrectly.
Well, I mean, I think so too. I think it could have been a combination of the way Sabine is. Mm-hmm. She's very different. Right. So she's very to go off the seat of her pants.
Right.
So training somebody and giving them the training of the Force and stuff like that, that's a different level, because that person has a lot of emotion ties
Right.
to to Ezra. So yeah, that's one thing they talk about a lot, is that they don't want your emotions to be mixed with the Force.
Right. And
So
so I would have imagined that is kind of uh, that is kind of the motivation that they're going to tell us, was there to stop that training, because she may have hit that point where it's like, oh shit, she can't control her emotions, and I can't teach her how to do that. So
yeah,
just like and it would also make sense in that if you look at it, she does the same thing towards Grogu,
yeah,
which is post Sabine. She's like, hey, look, I can't train him. I don't know how to do that. This may be Sabine may be the reason why she doesn't want to train Grogu as well, is because she realized, hey, I don't know how to do this, so I'm not going to train anybody to make things worse for the entire galaxy.
true.
So I think that may be the connect that they're going to make there, just to kind of keep it within the live action realm of things, is to say, hey, look at what happened to Anakin when people didn't train him correctly, and he was unbalanced and brash and all those kind of. He had a lot of the same character traits as Sabine has, uh, and that wasn't addressed with Anakin. And then also, you know, the reaction to not wanting anything to do with Grogu. That may be the extension of the Sabine situation, that she got to a certain point and realized, hey, yeah, I'm doing this wrong, and if I continue, I'm doing the galaxy a disservice.
That is true.
Yeah, this Facebook user says, didn't Freddie Prinze Jr. say that he wasn't reprising his role as Kanan Jarrus? That's what we just talked about.
Right.
That could be like Benedict Cumberbatch saying, I'm not Khan, which was J.J. Abrams directed
Right.
Star Trek film. And yeah, there was a lot of backlash after that whole deal with Benedict Cumberbatch saying that he's not Khan. And then, of course, spoiler alert, he's Khan. And a lot of people were angered. I wasn't angered. I thought that was cool. I was like, yeah, you deny it until the end, because, I mean, you want that surprise. And everyone just assumed, because I think all the rumors were out there that they tried to cast Benicio del Toro as Khan, and he said he couldn't do it. He had like scheduling issues or whatever. But yeah, I mean, you got to kind of deny it. And I mean, that was like the popular thing. And I didn't have any issue with it. And Freddie Prinze going out there now doing this, and if he does appear, no one's ever going to believe anything he says ever again about Star Wars, about appearing, not appearing. So, I mean, but it would be kind of funny if he showed up and he did a thing or two. But like you said earlier, Carl, I mean, they have his voice from Rebels, and they can just use it over maybe like a long shot that they do maybe from the ground level and show the huge explosion that blows them away and that whole thing with Rebels. But
I mean, it leaves so much of an open window when you say that, because you think about it. Look at Homecoming. They denied that they were going to be in that. And then you look at Freddie Prinze. He's actually coming on other podcasts saying, I mean, and he's actually, you can see the emotion in his face saying, I'm not, they already used up their last favor. I mean, he literally is going more into detail compared to being like the Spider-Man actor is being asked, Andrew Garfield, and, on the street or whatever. He's literally in conversation with other people stating it, and you can see the emotion in his face. So if this is true, he will deserve an Oscar for that denying. Well, I mean, you convinced me, because he sounds very convincing in the other podcasts when you listen to him. You know what I mean?
He's had an odd run of podcast appearances, because he had that whole thing where he said that Dave Filoni directed the hallway scene with Vader. And you had all these people at Lucasfilm saying, no, he didn't. It wasn't Filoni at all. And I don't know. It's been a weird like after career of Freddie Prinze Jr. saying some odd things about Star Wars and then being refuted by people that I think we all kind of trust, and just more than one person. So I don't know. I don't know what Freddie Prinze is doing. We all know that his wife, Sarah Michelle Gellar, is the seventh sister in Rebels. So she's a part of Star Wars. And it feels like to me she wants to still continue her convention career signing for Star Wars and doing things like that. But it feels like Freddie Prinze Jr. has stated that he's just done with Star Wars. He's still friends with Filoni, but he said he's, for all intents and purposes, he's just done.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
Yeah, I tend to believe him. I mean, he's got other projects going. You know, like when he was on Harloff, we talked about some of this stuff. So I don't think he really wants anything to do with it. But again, there's enough voiceover work that they have recorded that, and let's face it, Freddie Prinze Jr. does not really look like Kanan Jarrus, the animated character. I mean, could you put him in that costume and just say, put a beard on and say, yeah, look, it's him? Sure, you could. But as far as just the way he's drawn, that it's not like he's a spitting image of that character that he had. So they can cast anybody as a Kanan Jarrus and use whatever voice material they have and put it over the top of it. Matter of fact, they could just use a stuntman to do some action sequences and that's it. And just put Kanan's voice over the top of it, show the person from behind when you're doing, so you don't even have to have a lip sync situation going on, and you're good. Do I think that they may do a flashback with Kanan in it? There's a pretty good chance. I mean, we have multiple characters that very vividly remember Kanan Jarrus. So Sabine being one, because Kanan taught her how to use a lightsaber. So there's that. Then obviously Hera. And it would stand to reason that we're going to get to see the kid at some point in this show. So that would be another. The kid doesn't know his dad, but Hera could tell the kid about his dad, or could have told the kid about his dad. And we know there's a pretty good chance he's a Force user, so maybe he's seen Force Ghost dad. Who knows? There's any number of combination of things that they could do with it. Are they going to do it in this show, in this season? I don't know, but it's possible. But if they're going to do it, I think they would do it pretty early on, just to kind of tie things together for people that haven't seen Rebels, and also to make it unnecessary for people to feel as necessary to watch Rebels. That may seem counterintuitive to some people, but it's incredibly hard to get a lot of adult people to go watch a cartoon show. They're just not going to do it. It's like, I don't want to watch a stupid, silly, children's cartoon just to get some stuff explained to me. So since that is such a hard sell, it may be necessary to fill in the blanks in some of these concepts so that people can get the connection between the characters. Which they really haven't drawn so far. I mean, they've made it clear that they know each other, but how they know each other, the only thing you have is the memorial that they show for 2-3 seconds in the background.
Yeah, the mural.
Right. Yeah. So if you pay attention to that and pause it and then check out those characters and look at the characters that you get presented in the show, you might be able to. That mural right there. Yes, you might be able to infer that, but I don't see anybody really paying that much attention to that mural as far as general audience members go. But it might behoove them to explain some of the connections.
So when I watched that last episode and I saw the whole like Sabine with her new armor, or with her old armor kind of modified. She walks up to the mural. She touches Ezra's face on the mural, and I was like, okay, it's like the ending of the epilogue of Rebels. Okay, and it never occurred to me that was the actual ending that they were just showing us in live action. I think primarily because Ahsoka wasn't in the white, she didn't have the staff, so that all threw me off. And then eventually I'm like, oh yeah, that was the actual epilogue. They just showed us in live action. They just modified it. Because the ship taking off, it was all pretty much the same. Just like the Shin and Kanan saber. I mean, modify a little bit, but it was the same thing essentially.
Yeah. And the whole concept of modification they made pretty clear in the show so far as well, because Sabine has Ezra's saber. They flat out say that, and they even say that she modified Ezra's saber, so now it's her saber. So the concept of people taking somebody else's lightsaber and modifying it into their own is introduced in the show, and I just find it very odd that the creator of Rebels will take a prop that looks virtually identical to the Kanan Jarrus's lightsaber, and then that not being that lightsaber, just a haha psych kind of moment. Yeah, no, I just don't see that being done. So and what I could see also done for storytelling purposes is, for example, since there's a high probability that there's going to be a confrontation between Hera and these currently introduced villainous characters, this could be the classic. Remember this? The taunt.
Yeah.
So that we could have that coming, because Hera would recognize that lightsaber. Now, on one argument to say why this may not be Kanan's lightsaber is that Ahsoka didn't hit on that when she gets to see the close up. Because one could argue, well, she's seen that lightsaber before. Yeah, but has she really? Because they don't. It's not like she sparred with Kanan, at least not on screen. So I don't know how much exposure to Kanan's lightsaber she actually had.
Yeah, I can see that, and it was always in two pieces, right?
Right. So I don't know that Ahsoka necessarily does know what Kanan Jarrus's lightsaber looked like.
But to me, you would think that Hera would have recognized it.
Yeah, but Hera's not in that scene.
Yeah, but she does. She's on Home One, on the round table,
right?
And she sees Shin take the saber out.
Well, kind of, but let's face it. Let's face it. For one, it's an action shot. It's a lot harder to see things in an action.
Yeah,
shot.
I guess.
And it's grainy. It's grainy footage. So, it's not like she gets to see it in person or the close up that Ahsoka gets to see later.
Right. Okay.
So might she have recognized it? Sure, she might have. But at the same time, there's ample reason for her not to recognize it. For one, why would she think that would be it, and without somebody actually telling her that that's the one? She's not a Jedi. She doesn't know anything about Jedi lore, really. So she doesn't know anything about lightsabers. So as far as she's concerned, that may very well have looked like Kanan's lightsaber, but without having explained to her that it is actually Kanan's lightsaber, she may not take on that at all.
Yeah. And this Facebook user makes a comment. They could have pulled Kanan out of the time stream, used the mind flare on him, and now he is a Merrick. That's kind of what I brought up earlier. Didn't talk about the mind flare, but that's a possibility. That might be more of a possibility than that Inquisitor style character Merrick being Ezra. I don't know. It's just one of those things we just don't quite know for sure. And I've seen a lot of leaked stuff a long time ago, and I never saw anything that talked about that. So it's a huge mystery to me.
Yeah, and my thing is, yes, like we talked earlier, is it possible that that's the case? Sure, it's possible, but
yeah,
I mean that would fall back into what I would consider bad writing. At that point, you just
it'd be a little lazy. I think a little on the nose.
Yeah, well, it's not even on the nose. It's just like, oh, well, you don't have a clue of what to do here. Let's just slap this together.
Well,
and here you go.
It's that same old trope of the face is covered. Oh, it comes back because it's this guy. Oh, you should be shocked. Oh, I mean, it's like,
yeah.
To me, that would be very much on the nose because that's exactly what everyone I think thought. The face is covered. It's someone we know. It's Ezra. I think everyone jumped to that first conclusion. And then, of course, a lot of people said, nah, that would be a little off.
Yeah.
But
I would also say flat out, Ezra would not be able to fight Ahsoka. He doesn't have the lightsaber skill to do it. So I don't think it's Ezra. Same thing with Kanan Jarrus. I think if Kanan Jarrus had to fight Ahsoka, he would lose. Because let's not forget, Ahsoka got professional, Yoda, directly from Yoda lightsaber training.
Right.
These other two characters did not. They're self-taught. So who's going to win in the fight? I mean, it's probably going to be Ahsoka.
Right. Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. I don't think it's either one of those characters. I think this is somebody different. Could it be somebody we've seen before? Maybe. I mean, who knows? I mean, any number of characters could be it. This could be one of the Inquisitors that we thought was dead, technically possible. Like you said, death doesn't necessarily mean death in Star Wars. Somebody can get stabbed with a lightsaber and be perfectly fine. So for all we know, it's the Grand Inquisitor. Yeah, could be. You know, he's wearing a helmet because he's disfigured. He doesn't want anybody to see his face.
Oh, that is true too.
So yeah, that is entirely possible, and that helmet is incredibly oversized anyway. So if you wanted to make an argument for it being the Grand Inquisitor, I'm not saying it is, but let's make that argument. Yeah, it could be. That helmet is pretty darn big.
Yeah, it's kind of bulbous at the top, and it has the lines like the actual.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I bring that up. It's like it could be that character. Is it? Probably not, but it could be. It's the same lightsaber. It's
the son of the Grand Inquisitor.
Right. It's the son that came back. No, I mean, but seriously, who knows who this character is? It could be any number of characters. There's not enough information given to make any sort of judgment.
Right.
You can't really deduce anything. I've seen a bunch of people making a bunch of arguments that, like, for example, because Sam Witwer is credited, this is, Darth Vader's secret apprentice. It's like that doesn't make any sense. How do you make that connection? Same thing as the Ezra. How did Ezra get back and from this far off galaxy just so that he can be here and then try to travel back to the place he just got back from? That doesn't, aside from the fact that Ezra would then also know where this galaxy is located, and they don't need the map anymore if that's Ezra, if you think about it. So it's not Ezra, clearly.
So the interesting thing about the map, that map key, it's a sphere, and it's actually something you could bought at one point in time off of Amazon. It's actually a toy that they took and they just kind of like sprayed the silver on it and chromed it up a little bit. But it's an actual toy from a manufacturer that they use, which is what they do with a lot of stuff on the Disney Plus TV shows. You can find a lot of the footwear, the boots from Narkina 5. You can find those on Amazon. The sweater that the Mon Cal wore in Bryce Dallas Howard's episode.
By the way, did anybody else get Assassin's Creed vibes from that opening scene? That the whole bit about the apples in Assassin's Creed, little golden orbs that are hidden all over the place. And no,
I haven't played Assassin's Creed since the first one, and that was a long time ago.
Yeah, well, as part of the Assassin's Creed lore, they have these things called the apples.
Okay.
And so this looks like, I'm not saying that that's why it looks the way it looks. It's just one of those things where I'm like, kind of similar, interesting. Note to self.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it means absolutely nothing. That doesn't mean that we're about to see somebody with a wrist blade jumping off the trees and doing the little swan dive off the top of stuff.
So every time I think I've had a conversation with you, Carl, lately on the phone, we've always ended up talking about Thrawn. So Thrawn's a huge character. A lot of people have speculated that this is going to be the Star Wars version of Thanos. I don't think we think that, but if you want to make that type of like one-to-one comparison, very simple comparison, I guess maybe. But of course, once we do travel to this other galaxy and find Thrawn, we might find him in a totally different situation. But from what I think people are expecting, because he is who he is. And yeah, I definitely wanted you to talk to who Thrawn is, what he's all about, and give some detail on who Thrawn really is. And I guess spoilers for the history of Thrawn, because I think you've read all the books.
Right. If you haven't read any of the books, I might spoil some of the material for you. But so obviously he's a Chiss, hence the blue skin, red eyes, viewing spectrum in the infrared. So he can see it in the dark. It's explained in the books, not explained in the series at any point. But, the eyes are supposed to glow the way they are. So, yeah, he does have a level of night vision. But the main thing here is master military technician, not a politician at all. Like, they make that pretty clear in the books. I think they even make mention of it in Rebels at one point. I think when he talks to Price about, not really being into politics. So, but anyway, so there's that. He's a captain in the Chiss Ascendancy's defense force. Their uniforms are black, by the way. So if we see this character show up in a black uniform, that might be what we. And I wouldn't be opposed to that because it would make sense for him to be back in his Chiss uniform rather than continuing to wear anything Imperial. So there is that. Thrawn knows Anakin. He knows Padme as well. He knows the connection there. So that is covered in the books. I believe it's the second book where they cover that, Alliances. He does know that Anakin is Vader, so he knows that whole story. And Vader knows that he knows because they have a brief conversation about it in the books. So Thrawn is one of the few characters in the Star Wars universe that knows that entire Skywalker story. It's with him, R2-D2, Luke, Ahsoka. I think that's pretty much it, right? As far as characters that have full knowledge of the entire history there.
Yeah, I think so.
So he's one of that select few. So you have that. He is definitely not cruel. Like, he doesn't believe in cruelty. He doesn't really believe in torturing people. That's not his way of doing things. He likes to outsmart people. He analyzes culture by their artwork. That's covered in Rebels. That's covered in the books quite extensively, where he looks at artwork and makes assumptions based on the artwork about a specific culture and how they might react under certain circumstances. Very interesting. He believes in disobeying a direct order as long as it aids in the overall victory. So that's interesting for a military commander to have that attitude. So if you do something that's against the direct order, but at the end of the day it turns out that is the right thing to do, he'll reward you for it. Thrawn is the commander of the Seventh Fleet. The Seventh Fleet is the only, pretty much the only group in the Empire that has a patch on their left shoulder of their uniforms. Like, the standard officer's uniform does not have a patch on the left shoulder. It's only the Empire logo on the right. They have the Seventh Fleet logo on the left shoulder. That you can see that in Rebels. Just like his stormtroopers have the Seventh Fleet logo on the pauldron. Is all out of respect to Thrawn, because he doesn't rule with fear like the rest of them do. So he's respected by his peers, which is unusual for any Empire. So all of this, long story short, he's not, like I said earlier, he's not a villain. He's an antagonist. Completely different, two completely different things. Not mutually exclusive. You can be a villain and an antagonist, but just because you're an antagonist does not mean you're a villain. So something to keep in mind. So I kind of think it's highly likely that he will be introduced as a non-enemy combatant, which would make me very happy because I think that's where it belongs in my personal interpretation. But we'll see how Filoni and crew interpret all that.
Nice. And you think this picture right here is a flashback, right?
Yeah, it kind of has to be, because he flew through hyperspace and got ripped out of the bridge of a Star Destroyer. So I don't see how that uniform would have made it through all that. And then also I don't see him going to a completely different galaxy like they're claiming they did, and going, I need to find a tailor and I need this uniform made again. Why would you do that? That doesn't make any sense. So I think if we're going to see him in current day Thrawn, he's not going to be wearing that. That wouldn't make any sense, especially since the Imperials haven't made contact. We know that now. Yeah, in Mandalorian season 3, when they have that Council of the Remnant leaders. They make it kind of seem like they've had contact, but as we know now, they definitely have not. So nobody's talked to Thrawn. So why would he wear a Imperial uniform? That doesn't seem to make any logical sense whatsoever.
So this could actually be a flashback between Thrawn and Vader, perhaps.
It could be Thrawn Vader. It could be Thrawn the Emperor. They could actually have that scene out of the book that they in here that where he explains where his allegiances lie. However, that wouldn't make sense with the rank insignia because he is wearing the Grand Admiral badge here. If you look at the plate, I believe he's a captain when he makes that argument with the Emperor. So that wouldn't be in canon, I don't think, but I could be wrong on that too. But they have had several interactions since then where the Emperor challenged his loyalty to the Empire. So this could very well be one of those conversations between the Emperor and Thrawn where he explains to him, "Hey, look, man, I respect you and I will do anything you need done, but I'm a Chiss first and foremost, and at the end of the day, that's where he's going to go back to." And the Emperor knows this to be true as well. They make that pretty clear as well. So logically, by the character that I read in the books, anyways, there's really no way that he's coming back as an Imperial leader. There's no motivation for him to do that I can tell.
All right,
sweet.
Good summation of Thrawn. Now our listeners and viewers can go out there and watch with a little bit different angle on the character because, like I said, a lot of people have him pinned as like a big bad, and if they do it the way he is in the books, like Carl's stating, it's not going to be that really at all. So it should be really interesting the way we see Ezra and Thrawn interact if Ezra's still around when we do get to that point.
I could literally see them being best pals, to be quite honest. Because it's been a couple of years, they would have had to have relied on each other to make it out of that little predicament. So if they're both alive, the only logical explanation would be that they work together, not against each other, because then one of them would have died in the process. So either Ezra is dead, Thrawn's dead, or they're both alive. If they're both alive, they're allied at this point, I would think.
True.
So.
All right, guys, I think that's the show. I just want to tell everyone before they go, if you're watching us on YouTube, like, subscribe, hit the bell to notify you. We're on Instagram at Star Wars Stuff Podcast. We're on X at Stuff Pod. We're also on Threads at Star Wars Stuff Podcast. Support us on Patreon if you can. Star Wars Stuff Podcast 2187. We are loading up videos there daily during Star Wars season while AHSOKA is happening. And hopefully we can just keep on doing that because we got a lot of commentaries for Clone Wars, Rebels. I did a few unboxings of my last merch from Star Wars Celebration Europe. We're also on TikTok. You can find us at Star Wars Stuff Podcast. You can also email the show at starwarstuffpodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook, of course, the Star Wars Stuff Podcast group and page. And if you can, give us 5 stars, write a review there. We've got some new reviews telling us specific things, and we appreciate that. That's all the places you can find us. Thank you so much for all the love and support. You guys listened to a lot of our stuff that we did lately on AHSOKA, and we thank you for that. For Ray, for Carl, or Darth CJ, I should say, may the Force be with you.
Always.